What if the person helping your family was actually plotting to destroy you for profit? I should have known something was wrong when Keiko started bringing that oversized purse to every therapy session. The black leather tote that seemed to swallow half her lap, positioned carefully on the floor beside her chair with the zipper always slightly open. But grief makes you blind to details, and I was drowning in so much worry about my son Marcus that I missed the warning signs completely. It all started 18 months ago when Marcus finally admitted he had a problem. My 26-year-old boy, who used to build elaborate Lego cities and dream of becoming an architect, had gambled away $180,000. The number still makes my stomach drop, even now. His marriage to Keiko was hanging by a thread, their 4-year-old son Dylan was acting out at preschool, and Marcus looked like a ghost of himself, hollow-eyed and shaking. When Keiko first suggested family therapy, I thought it was a miracle. Finally, she was willing to fight for their marriage instead of just threatening divorce every other week. Dr. Sarah Taylor came highly recommended, with a warm office in downtown Portland filled with soft lighting and tissues strategically placed on every surface. She specialized in addiction recovery and family systems, exactly what we needed. Those first few sessions were brutal. Marcus would sit there picking at his cuticles until they bled while Keiko and I took turns listing all the ways his gambling had destroyed our trust. Dylan's sleep problems, the second mortgage on their house, the lies upon lies upon lies. Dr. Taylor guided us through it all with gentle questions and thoughtful observations about our family patterns. I remember thinking how professional Keiko seemed during those sessions, taking notes in a small leather journal and asking clarifying questions about treatment timelines and recovery statistics. She worked in podcast production for a local media company, so I assumed her attention to detail was just part of her personality. She was always so composed, even when discussing the most painful topics. Marcus was making real progress by month 3. He had been clean from gambling for 97 days, was attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings 6 times a week, and had started seeing Dr. Taylor individually twice a week on top of our family sessions. For the first time in years, I was starting to hope we might actually get through this as a family. That hope started cracking during our 4th month of therapy. I noticed Keiko checking her phone more frequently during sessions, claiming work emergencies. She would step into the hallway to take calls, returning with this strange energy, almost excited. When Dr. Taylor would ask about her feelings regarding Marcus's recovery, Keiko's responses started sounding rehearsed, like she was performing rather than sharing. The real turning point came during a particularly intense session in February. Marcus was talking about his darkest moment, when he had stolen money from Dylan's college fund to place one last bet. He was sobbing, his whole body shaking as he described the shame of looking at his sleeping son and knowing what he had done. It was raw and heartbreaking and absolutely private. But I caught Keiko glancing at her purse during Marcus's breakdown, a quick calculating look that made my skin crawl. When I mentioned it to my husband Richard later that night, he brushed it off as stress. "Everyone processes grief differently," he said. I wanted to believe him. The sessions continued through March and April. Marcus was doing so well, celebrating 6 months clean, slowly rebuilding trust with Dylan, even starting to look for work again. Dr. Taylor was talking about transitioning to monthly sessions instead of weekly. We were healing. Then everything exploded on a Tuesday morning in early May. I was having coffee and scrolling through news on my phone when I saw the headline trending on social media, "Addicted to Destruction, new podcast series exposes real family in crisis." My heart stopped. The description mentioned a Portland family dealing with gambling addiction, featuring actual therapy session audio. Actual therapy session audio. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely tap the link. The podcast company was called Authentic Audio, and their website promised unfiltered access to real family drama. No actors, no scripts, just raw human emotion recorded in real time. The first episode had already been downloaded over 200,000 times. I called Marcus immediately, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Then I called Richard, barely able to form words. He rushed home from work and we listened to the first episode together in our kit Taylor, holding hands across the table like we were bracing for impact. It was our voices. Our actual voices discussing the most private details of our family's pain. The episode opened with Marcus describing his first bet at age 14, using his birthday money at a casino during a family trip to Vegas. The audio quality was crystal clear, like we were sitting right there in Dr. Taylor's office again. But it was worse than just hearing our voices. The podcast had added dramatic music and editing that made our genuine pain sound like entertainment. They had inserted commentary from the host, a woman with a sultry voice who analyzed our family dynamics like we were characters in a soap opera. Marcus's breakdown about stealing from Dylan's college fund was presented as the climactic moment of episode 3, complete with dramatic pause and commercial break. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Someone we trusted, someone who sat in that room with us week after week, had recorded our most vulnerable moments and sold them for entertainment. But who and how? I called Dr. Taylor's office immediately. Her receptionist seemed confused, claiming they were looking into a possible privacy breach but had no additional information. Dr. Taylor herself was unavailable, attending a conference out of state. Something about that felt wrong, but I could not put my finger on why. Marcus finally called me back around 3 that afternoon. He had heard the podcast too. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was in shock. Keiko was nowhere to be found, he said. She had left that morning before he woke up, taking Dylan and a suitcase. Her phone was going straight to voicemail. We met at Marcus's house, a small craftsman bungalow that felt too quiet without Dylan's toys scattered around. Marcus looked destroyed, worse than he had during his darkest gambling days. He kept running his hands through his hair and staring at nothing. Richard and I tried to piece together how this could have happened. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental, the audio too clear to be from a hidden device across the room. Someone had been recording deliberately, with professional equipment. That night I could not sleep, so I started researching authentic audio online. The company was only 8 months old, founded by someone named Victoria Nash with experience in reality television production. Their business model was simple: find real people in crisis and turn their pain into content. They had 3 other podcast series already running, all featuring families dealing with major trauma. I decided to listen to one of their other shows, called Divorce Diaries, Real Women, Real Heartbreak. The second episode featured a woman named Jennifer talking about her husband's affair. About 10 minutes in, I heard something that made me freeze. The woman asking Jennifer follow-up questions, the voice sounded familiar. I rewound and listened again. Then again. The interviewer's voice had a slight accent, the same distinctive rhythm I had heard hundreds of times over the past 8 months. It was Dr. Sarah Taylor. The realization hit me like ice water. Our therapist, the woman we had trusted with our deepest pain, was moonlighting for a podcast company that turned therapy sessions into entertainment. But that still did not explain how they had recorded us without our knowledge or consent. I spent the next 2 days digging deeper, using every internet search skill I had learned over the years. I found Dr. Taylor's college records, her professional licensing information, even her social media profiles. That is when I discovered her connection to Keiko. They had been roommates at Portland State University 15 years ago. Not just roommates, but close friends who had graduated together with degrees in psychology and media studies respectively. Dr. Taylor had even been a bridesmaid in Keiko's wedding to Marcus. The pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. Keiko had not randomly found Dr. Taylor through research and recommendations. She had specifically chosen her old college friend, someone she could trust to participate in this sick scheme. The oversized purse, the careful positioning, the excited energy after phone calls during sessions, it had all been planned. I felt physically ill thinking about how calculated it was. While Marcus was pouring his heart out about his addiction, while I was sharing my fears about losing my son, while we were all trying desperately to heal, Keiko and Dr. Taylor were secretly recording us for profit. But I needed proof before I could do anything. I called a lawyer friend who specialized in privacy law, and she walked me through what evidence would be needed to build a case. Recording someone without consent in therapy sessions violated multiple laws, from wiretapping statutes to healthcare privacy regulations. If I could prove the conspiracy, both women would face serious legal consequences. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dylan called me crying on Thursday evening, asking when he could see Daddy again. Keiko had told him they were staying at Aunt Sarah's house for a while, which struck me as odd since Keiko had always claimed she had no close family in Portland. Aunt Sarah. Dr. Sarah Taylor. I drove to Dr. Taylor's address, a sleek townhouse in northwest Portland. Sure enough, Keiko's silver Honda was parked in the driveway. I sat in my car for almost an hour, trying to decide what to do. Finally, I called Marcus. He arrived 20 minutes later, looking grim and determined. We walked up to the front door together and knocked. Dr. Taylor answered, looking shocked and immediately guilty. She tried to close the door, but Marcus pushed past her into the house. Keiko was sitting at the Kid Taylor table with Dylan, helping him with a coloring book. When she saw us, her face went completely pale. Dylan ran to Marcus, wrapping his little arms around his father's legs and asking why everyone looked so sad. The confrontation that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Marcus demanded answers while Dr. Taylor and Keiko exchanged panicked glances. Finally, Keiko broke down and admitted everything. She had approached Dr. Taylor 6 months before Marcus's gambling problem came to light, pitching the idea of monetizing real therapy sessions. Dr. Taylor was struggling financially after a messy divorce and was immediately interested. They had tested the concept on 3 other families first, all clients of Dr. Taylor who had been dealing with major trauma. The method was sophisticated. Keiko would hide a professional-grade recording device in her purse, positioned to capture clear audio of entire sessions. Dr. Taylor would guide conversations toward the most dramatic revelations, essentially directing the sessions like reality television episodes. After recording, they would edit the audio and sell it to podcast companies hungry for authentic content. Keiko had been planning to divorce Marcus anyway, she said. His gambling addiction had destroyed her trust and she wanted to move back to Los Angeles where her sister lived. The podcast money, $75,000, would give her a fresh start with Dylan. She saw it as compensation for the pain Marcus had caused their family. What made it even worse was learning about their other victims. Dr. Taylor showed us files on 3 other families whose private therapy sessions had been turned into entertainment. A couple dealing with infertility. A teenager struggling with an eating disorder and her parents. A military veteran with PTSD trying to rebuild his relationship with his daughter. Marcus was shaking with rage, but he managed to keep his voice calm for Dylan's sake. He told Keiko she had 15 minutes to pack Dylan's things because they were going home. Dr. Taylor tried to intervene, claiming legal complications, but Richard shut her down with a look that could have melted steel. The legal battle that followed was intense but swift. My lawyer friend connected us with a firm that specialized in privacy violations and healthcare fraud. The evidence was overwhelming once we started looking: email exchanges between Keiko and Dr. Taylor planning the recordings, financial records showing payments from authentic audio, even text messages joking about their unsuspecting clients. The podcast company tried to claim journalistic protection, but that defense crumbled when faced with the evidence of illegal recording and healthcare privacy violations. The other 3 families joined our lawsuit as soon as they learned what had happened to them. Dr. Taylor lost her license within 6 weeks. The state psychology board moved faster than anyone expected, horrified by the scope of the violations. Keiko faced criminal charges for illegal recording and conspiracy, though she ultimately plea bargained to avoid jail time. Marcus filed for emergency custody of Dylan while the criminal case was pending. Keiko's plan to move to Los Angeles with the podcast money evaporated when the courts froze the funds as evidence. She ended up staying in Portland, working at a coffee shop and living with her sister who had moved up from California to help with legal fees. The hardest part was explaining everything to Dylan. How do you tell a 4-year-old that his mother betrayed his family for money, but still help him maintain a relationship with her? Marcus handled it better than I expected, focusing on Dylan's needs rather than his own anger. The lawsuit took 8 months to resolve, but the outcome exceeded our expectations. The podcast company settled for $3.2 million rather than face a public trial. Dr. Taylor's malpractice insurance covered another $800,000, and her personal assets added $200,000 more. We split the money equally among the 4 families, with each receiving just over $1 million after legal fees. Marcus used his portion to pay off their remaining debts and establish a college fund for Dylan that Keiko could never access. Richard and I donated our entire settlement to addiction recovery programs throughout Oregon, funding free family therapy for people who could not otherwise afford it. The most satisfying moment came during Keiko's sentencing hearing. The judge was clearly disgusted by the scope of the betrayal, describing it as a violation of the most sacred trust between patient and therapist. Keiko received 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and a permanent restraining order preventing her from profiting from any content involving our family. But the real justice was quieter and more personal. Marcus celebrated 1 year clean from gambling 2 months after the settlement. Dylan started calling me every Sunday to tell me about his week, his little voice bright with the security of knowing his family was stable again. Marcus met someone new, a teacher named Elena who treats Dylan like her own son and makes Marcus laugh in ways I had not seen since before his addiction. Keiko sees Dylan every other weekend now, supervised visits until he turns 7 per the custody agreement. She seems smaller somehow, diminished by the consequences of her choices. Sometimes I feel sorry for her, but then I remember Marcus sobbing about stealing from his son's college fund while she calculated how much money his pain was worth. The experience taught me that betrayal often comes disguised as help. Keiko presented herself as a concerned wife seeking professional support for her family when she was actually orchestrating our exploitation. Dr. Taylor positioned herself as a caring therapist dedicated to our healing while secretly directing our pain for maximum entertainment value. But it also showed me the power of fighting back. When someone violates your trust, especially in such a calculated and harmful way, you have choices. You can let the betrayal destroy you, or you can channel your anger into seeking justice, not just for yourself but for others who might be victimized in the same way. The other 3 families have become like extended family to us now. We get together every few months, sometimes just to check in, sometimes to celebrate milestones in our healing. There is something powerful about shared trauma and shared victory that creates bonds deeper than normal friendships. Marcus is doing incredibly well now. He has been promoted twice at his new job, an architecture firm that specializes in affordable housing. Dylan is thriving in first grade, reading above grade level and obsessed with dinosaurs. Elena has moved in with them, and they are talking about getting married next summer. As for me, I have become an advocate for stronger privacy protections in therapy settings. The laws in Oregon have been strengthened because of our case, requiring explicit written consent for any recording of therapy sessions and establishing harsh penalties for violations. 3 other states have adopted similar legislation. I still think about that day in Dr. Taylor's Kid Taylor, seeing Dylan coloring peacefully while the adults fought over the wreckage of our trust. Children recover from trauma faster than adults, but they also remember more than we think they do. Dylan will grow up knowing that his family fought for him, that we did not let betrayal go unpunished. Sometimes people ask if I regret going to therapy in the first place, given how it was violated. But I do not. Marcus needed professional help to overcome his addiction, and family therapy, when conducted ethically, can be incredibly healing. What happened to us was not a failure of therapy itself, but a betrayal by specific individuals who chose profit over their professional obligations. The real lesson is about vigilance. Trust should not be given blindly, even to professionals with credentials and warm offices. Ask questions, verify backgrounds, pay attention to small details that seem off. Most importantly, if something feels wrong, investigate. Your instincts are usually right. Today, 3 years later, our family is stronger than it was before Marcus's addiction began. We have been through the worst kind of betrayal and come out intact. Dylan has a father who is honest about his struggles and committed to his recovery, an extended family that fought for his well-being, and a stepmother who loves him unconditionally. Keiko still lives in Portland, still works at the coffee shop, still sees Dylan on weekends. I do not hate her anymore, which surprises me. Hate requires too much energy, and I would rather spend that energy on building something positive. But I will never trust her again, and I will never forget what she was willing to do to our family for money. The podcast episodes were removed from all platforms as part of the settlement, though I know copies probably exist somewhere online. Sometimes I wonder if Dylan will find them someday, hearing his family's pain turned into entertainment. If he does, I hope he will also find the records of how we fought back, how we turned our victimization into justice for others. That is the story I want him to remember, not the sound of our betrayal, but the sound of our victory.